safe. Here you are invited to set down the weight of the hours behind you and to rest in words that move slowly, gently, like a train gliding through the night. I'm honored to be your guide this evening. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with the Dream Carriage, for allowing yourself this nightly ritual of calm. Each story waits for you here, steady as lamplight, familiar as a well-worn path, always ready to carry you into peace. Together, we will step into a world shaped not by urgency, but by stillness, a world where sounds soften, light deepens, and every detail is meant to ease your breath and quiet your mind. So, settle in, let the day fall away, and allow tonight's journey on Dream Carriage to open gently before you, leading you toward rest, and finally, toward sleep.
Once there lived an astronomer who was mesmerized by the night sky. He would stay awake all night, admiring the constellations sparkling in the darkness overhead. He lived in a small village in ancient Greece, where the mountains climbed up from the sea. The hillside was dotted with small houses, which formed a constellation of their own. But although he lived in a wonderful place, he had a singular passion. Once he was awakened to the beauty of the night sky, it wasn't long before the astronomer cared for nothing else. The astronomer lived in a squat white house, adorned simply with a bed, dresser, desk, and chair. He didn't need much else, because all he did in the house was sleep and record the constellations while sitting at his desk. He had no need for a table or chairs for guests, as he rarely entertained a single friend or relative. He had no time for such things when there was always more of the night sky to discover. What wonders must still lie above to help people navigate, tell the time, and read the seasons, he thought. In his dreams, all he saw were the stars. He wished he could float into space to get a better look at the pinpricks of light that made up his life's work. The little corner of Greece where he lived was blessed with clear skies, and the astronomer wanted to discover as much of them as he could. Each night, he wandered further from the village, feet pacing over the rocky ground, to see the stars from different viewpoints. In the village, the townspeople farmed, gardened, and fished every day. All who lived there knew everything about everyone else. And so, the astronomer felt there was much more possibility in the heavens. Wanting to take full advantage of his nighttime strolls, the astronomer slept in the hot afternoon, while his friends and family enjoyed long meals together. At night, while they slumbered, he wandered the fields alone, climbing rolling hills and strolling on rocky paths, always gazing skyward. As dawn broke and the rest of the village was waking up, the astronomer would tuck himself away in the privacy of his home and write down his observations from the night before. Then he'd drift off to sleep, dreaming of the night ahead. He was so consumed by the world of galaxies, planets, and celestial bodies. All the most exciting things, the astronomer thought, happened at night. During the day, light illuminated all. But when the night sky took over, so much remained a mystery. It was a challenge to learn about it all. He watched the seasons pass through the stars, the landscape changing around him while he slept. Since he only went out at night, the astronomer never noticed the blooming of new flowers in spring, or the sweet, earthy scent of autumn. Someone else had already learned all there was to know about everything on land, he thought. What hid in the night sky was untapped potential, secrets, and unanswered questions. The astronomer watched Artemis's hunt in the stars. He sought the gods of Olympus in the constellations. Sometimes, under the glint of the moon, he would visit the temple of Artemis to pay tribute to the beauty shining in the sky above. The temple in his village had an open roof, which was perfect for stargazing. He barely noticed the architect's marble columns or carved statues, as he only cared for the creations above. One night, the astronomer was out for his walk, gazing up at the stars, as he always did. He was admiring the way the Big and Little Dipper fit perfectly together. Not looking where he was going, he tripped over a log and found himself tangled in his robes on the ground. His neighbor happened to hear the commotion and came out to see what had happened. The astronomer chuckled at his clumsiness and gathered himself together. As the neighbor helped him to his feet, he said, "My friend, why do you spend so much time looking at the stars when you fail to see what is right in front of you?" The astronomer laughed. He thought of the beauty in the stars and the night sky, the joy of gazing at worlds so far away from his own. But perhaps his neighbor was right. Maybe he spent too much time looking up at the sky and not enough time enjoying what was given to him on Earth. The astronomer returned home, and for the first time since he was a child, fell asleep that night. He awoke in the morning to the town coming alive. The sounds of laughter and quiet chatter rolled in the warm breeze outside. At first, the astronomer felt gloomy. What had he missed in the heavens last night? But then, as he dressed and went outside, his smile slowly grew. The same neighbor who had helped him the night before invited him over for breakfast. there was delicious, soft, crusty bread, crisp on the outside and doughy on the inside, along with hard cheeses and a warm mug of strong coffee. How long had it been since the astronomer had eaten freshly baked bread or enjoyed a mug of coffee shared with a friend? As they sat and sipped their coffee around the outdoor table, the astronomer told the neighbor's wife what had happened the night before. When they were finished, the couple decided to accompany him on a walk around the village. They were determined to help him experience everything they loved about their hometown. They set off together to walk down the lane. "Doesn't the soft earth feel wonderful beneath your feet?" they asked him. "Can you smell the fresh bread and coffee all the other villagers are enjoying this morning?" The astronomer's senses were delighted by the aroma of breakfast, and he noticed how the earth was slightly soft but still firm beneath his feet, cushioning each step he took. In all the hours he had spent wandering, he'd never realized how wonderful it could be. If he had paid so much attention to the ground the night before, perhaps he never would have tripped. They walked past a woman selling fruit from a little stand. "I haven't seen you in a while," the fruit seller called to the astronomer, waving him over. "Let's share some fresh juice together." She squeezed oranges into a cup. They let off the delicate and enticing floral scent of orange blossoms. When he took his first sip, the cool, sweet taste of the juice filled his mouth. Yes, the stars at night are beautiful, but you can't drink the stars, he mused to himself. In that moment, the astronomer thought the glittering constellations only looked half as sweet as this earthly delight. When the neighbors told the fruit seller of their mission to help him see the beauty of the town, she said they must go and visit her niece's garden. For if you were enjoying the wonders on earth, that was the best place in town to do so. "I'll show you the way," she said, closing up her stall in favor of a new adventure. As they walked down the lane, more and more of their neighbors came out to join them. They weren't used to seeing the astronomer out and about during the day, so they each had a spot they wanted to show him. The astronomer couldn't remember the last time he'd been around so many people. He had opted for the quiet of night rather than the noises of daytime. But now that he was truly listening, he could hear the music in his friends' voices. When the group arrived at the niece's garden, she welcomed them with open arms. "What an honor to have the great astronomer in my garden for the very first time," she said with a smile. Together, he and the townspeople admired the flowers. The niece pointed to a bunch of red blooms growing around a wooden archway. These are special wildflowers created by Aphrodite, she told him. The astronomer stood under the arch, admiring the red and green, mixing with the brown wood overhead. The flowers smelt piney and a little sweet. He enjoyed them immensely. Next, they looked at a patch of beautiful purple irises. When the astronomer peered at them closely, he could see the white circles surrounding the yellow center that gave the flower its distinctive name. They gazed at orange lilies and white orchids, immersing themselves in the fresh and fragrant air of the garden. When it was time to leave, the niece decided to join the rest of her neighbors on their walk around the village. Watching the astronomer experiencing these pleasures for the first time was reminding everyone just how wonderful life on Earth could be. The astronomer strolled in the middle of the group as they left the center of the village and continued down the road to the Temple of Apollo. The pillars of the temple glittered in the sunlight. The astronomer noticed the change underfoot as he stepped from the dirt path to the temple's marble floor. The heat of the day was growing, and he appreciated the cool ground beneath him and the roof above. It was quite different from the Temple of Artemis, he thought. He took a moment to stand still. His feet pressed into the marble, and a gentle breeze wound its way through the pillars, keeping him cool in the shade of the temple. The other townspeople around him explored the building, admiring the statues and carvings on the walls. He enjoyed her feeling of staying still while the world moved around him. Perhaps he need not always be in motion, he thought. Sometimes it was best to take a break from work and study and just enjoy existing in the moment. When he was ready, he walked slowly around the walls of the temple, admiring the details. The great artists and architects had embedded them into this special place, which was used for community gatherings and for paying homage to the gods. When the sun rose higher in the sky, the group left the temple and gathered in the shaded village square for lunch. They each shared what they had: soft cheeses, leftover bread from the morning, roasted barley, and juicy olives. The astronomer relished each burst of flavor in his mouth. Before, he had hurried through meals, stealing bites in between long periods of stargazing. Now, he appreciated taking the time to savor these delicious foods. How have I never taken the time to really experience this before? He wondered. He ate slowly, enjoying the sweet, and salty tastes intermingled on his tongue, and noticing how the crunchy barley and soft cheese complemented each other perfectly. When they'd finished the main course, the fruit seller fetched a basket of her produce for dessert. The villagers drizzled the different fruits with honey, making them even sweeter and more decadent. The astronomer took a bite of each, delighting in the rich flavors. After the meal, the people lazily walked back to their homes for a nap. They waved goodbye to each other and promised to visit again soon. Sleep during the day was one thing the astronomer was used to. But when he got home and lay down on his bed, he couldn't fall asleep. Instead, he paid attention to the soft sound of his breath, moving in and out of his body. He listened to the gentle twittering of birds outside, accompanied by the soft buzzing of bees. Through the open window, he smelled the flowers in the garden. A light gust of wind brought in all the delightful aromas of herbs, spices, and greenery. He lay there, resting his body and using his senses to immerse himself in the world around him. As the sun drifted lower in the sky, the astronomer heard a knock at the door. His neighbors had come to fetch him. There was one more thing they wanted to show him this evening. Together, they walked the winding path up the mountain next to the village. The path was narrower here, and the parade of townsfolk carried blankets and baskets on their heads. The evening breeze rustled the shrubs around them, and birds followed along above, wondering where the procession of villages was going. The astronomer watched the clicking heels of the woman in front of him and heard the footsteps of the man behind. His senses felt alive and heightened in a way he had never experienced before, even at night. When they reached a plateau, they spread out the blankets and unpacked the food. Looking around, he realized everyone had brought all of the finest things in their pantries. The farmer took out fresh vegetables and meats. The fisherman unpacked salted herring and calamari. Boiled eggs were sliced and passed around, and everyone shared wine from an ornate glass jug. The people talked and laughed, but the astronomer sat in silence, taking everything in. He listened to the stories of his new friends' lives that he had so often ignored before. He saw the way the trees swayed in the wind, casting shadows on the rocks dotting the mountainside. He could see the village below and the peak of the mountain above. and he enjoyed the aromas of all the different foods the people had lovingly prepared. Soon, the sun began to paint the sky in vibrant hues. In all the time the astronomer had sought the stars, he had never before appreciated their opening act. He had always waited for the sunset to finish and night to fall. But now that he had slowed down, he could admire each shade of yellow, pink, red, and purple as the sun lowered itself sleepily behind the mountain's peak. When the final rays of sun disappeared beneath the horizon, the villagers packed up the remaining food and folded the blankets, ready to go home for the night. But the astronomers stopped them. "Now, I have something to show you," he said. His friends unfurled their blankets and lay down on the soft earth, watching the sky grow dark overhead. Glittering white and yellow stars began to poke through the darkness, delighting the villagers watching from below. The astronomer had seen the stars many times before, but he'd never noticed how their bright light brought out the shadows of the trees and heightened the contrast of the ground below. He lay back on his blanket, admiring each constellation as it revealed itself. One by one, he pointed them out to the villagers, who were appreciative to be sharing in his knowledge. "I understand why you like to walk at night, but isn't it also wonderful to be still under the stars?" his neighbor asked him. The astronomer nodded his head in agreement. He didn't always have to be searching for something new when so much beauty revealed itself around him every night. He wanted to fully take it in, not rush to discover the next thing. As they lay there, stargazing, the villagers felt their eyelids growing heavy. They began to yawn, and they knew it was time to pack up their things and go home to bed. In a slow and careful line, they tiptoed down the mountain. The astronomer felt the path beneath his feet, noticing each pebble or twig he passed over. The stars illuminated the way home, and as they walked, the villagers whispered of all they'd seen in the sky above. When they reached the village square, all the townspeople waved goodbye. One after another, they retreated into their homes, finding cozy spots on soft mattresses and under warm blankets. The astronomer, too, went back to his house. But instead of crawling into bed, he brought a pillow and blanket outside. laid him down on a soft patch of grass and rested his head on the pillow. Tonight, he would dream of stars again, but this time, he would fully realize their beauty. He slowly let his eyes close as the light breeze and gentle hooting of owls lulled him to sleep under the glorious night sky. As a travel writer, Ben was used to moving around. He'd been all over the world, but this summer he was going to a place that he'd wanted to visit for a long time, and he couldn't wait to get there. Ben specialized in writing about beaches, as these were his favorite spots. On this trip, he would be flying to Spain, one of the countries with the best beaches in the world. After doing a lot of research, Ben had decided to visit Mallorca, the largest of Spain's Balearic Islands, which are located in the Mediterranean. Here, he would stay in Puerto Cristo, a small fishing village on the eastern coast. Ben was a great swimmer, and he enjoyed diving as well. Puerto Cristo seemed to have some nice diving areas, which was what attracted him in the first place. When Ben finally boarded the plane, he could barely contain his excitement. As the airplane reached its cruising altitude, he opened the window shade and watched the clouds. The plane was flying smoothly, and the clouds looked like white, fluffy cotton. Through the clouds reminded Ben of how he felt when he was floating in the water. He felt the same kind of lightness, like he didn't weigh a thing. For a while, he watched the changing shapes of the clouds and imagined that he was a small, light bird crossing the sky. He felt a sense of freedom, imagining that he could go anywhere in the world just by flapping his wings. As he imagined this, Ben felt his body becoming even lighter. When he pictured the bird's wings moving effortlessly, his own arms and legs felt particularly light and relaxed. Relaxation finally took over his whole body, and when his eyelids fell under the spell, he calmly drifted into sleep. Some hours later, Ben was woken up by a voice coming through the airplane speakers. They were about to land. Ben fastened his seatbelt and rubbed his eyes. Through the window, he saw pieces of land that seemed to float atop the blue sea. As the plane approached the ground, the islands became clearer. Ben could see flashes of green, brown, and ivory as the trees, plants, and rock formations grew in size and detail. He was already imagining all the things that he would do once he landed. His mind and heart were filled with excitement. A little while later, Ben got on the bus to Porto Cristo, and after a relaxing 2-hour journey, he arrived in his hotel room. Ben was pleased to see that the room was clean and neat. The colors were a combination of white, light browns, and light blues. The bed had just been made. Ben lay down and took a deep breath. The air smelled nice and fresh, and the pillows and sheets were very comfortable. The room was not that big, but it was extremely cozy. It felt like his own personal nest. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly and deeply as he began to unwind. As he was relaxing on the bed, he felt a breeze on his feet. It was coming from a sliding door. Ben got up and stepped outside. On the balcony, he caught his first glimpse of the gorgeous hotel pool. It was huge. Breathing in, he noticed that the air was salty and tasted like the ocean. As he took in the beach scent and the view of the pool, he wanted to be at the seaside right away. He got ready and left the hotel. Once Ben was outside, the salt in the air was more evident. The breeze carried the essence of the ocean throughout the town. Ben could imagine tiny grains of sand getting tangled in his hair as it was combed by the light wind. It was about 4 in the afternoon, and the sun was just right. It was bright, but not so hot anymore. Ben felt the comforting warmth of the sun's rays as he made his way down to the beach. The sand was fine and smooth. Walking barefoot felt like being massaged by tiny beads. The water was a clear shade of blue, and some areas even shimmered turquoise under the sunlight. The ocean looked like an infinite pool of freshness and beauty. Admiring the view in front of him, Ben felt deeply relaxed. As he let the water wash over his feet, he could feel a wave of calm rising through his body. The moment felt so peaceful. He wanted to stay there forever. At last, Ben continued to make his way through the shallows. he walked slowly as the small waves lapped over his feet. Then, all of a sudden, Ben felt a slight tremor in the ground beneath him. Though it only lasted for a few seconds, he was sure that there was something unusual about the tremor. Maybe even something magical. Though perhaps it was just his imagination. But then he saw something peculiar out of the corner of his eye. It looked like a golden stick flying past him. Now, Ben was convinced that something strange was going on. As he squinted and looked around, trying to find where the stick had come from, he noticed something else. A few meters ahead, the water was moving, and these weren't ordinary waves. Curious to see what was happening, Ben moved towards the strange waves. And then, when he was almost there, he saw a man emerging from the water. Before Ben could come any closer, the stranger raised his hand in a commanding gesture, telling him to stop. The man had a peculiar look. He was middle-aged, muscular, and taller than average. And he had a long, tangled beard. A moment later, the man went underwater. Ben could see the surface churning vigorously. He wanted to get a closer look and see what was going on. But remembering the man's gesture, he continued to keep his distance. After a few seconds, the water began to settle. When it was completely still, the man emerged again and signaled to Ben to come closer. Ben walked forward, and as the sea became gradually deeper, he had to swim to reach the stranger. The water around the man was tranquil, and it also looked somewhat different, like it was glowing slightly. There seemed to be actual ripples forming and vibrating around his presence. Perhaps Ben's eyes were playing a trick on him. But before he could decide, the stranger spoke to him. "I'm in need of your help, young man," the stranger said. His eyes were the color of the ocean. They seemed calm, like the surrounding waters, but his expression looked troubled. "A very important possession of mine has gone missing," the man continued, "and I need you to help me find it. It is my golden trident, my most powerful protection against sea monsters." At first, Ben thought that this was a joke. But then he remembered the golden stick that he had seen flying past him. He asked the stranger why he owned a trident. The man looked him in the eye and replied, "I am Poseidon, god of the sea." Ben gaped in amazement. Here, standing right in front of him, was a man who claimed to be a Greek god. Poseidon explained that as the god of the sea, he had command over water. Every sea creature obeyed him. To prove this, he raised his right arm. As he did this, a column of water emerged from the ocean. Then Poseidon moved his arm in a circular motion. The column followed his movements, and the water formed a ring. When he stopped moving his arm, a perfect hoop of water was floating above the sea. Ben gasped. But that wasn't all. Poseidon then made a peculiar sound. A couple of seconds later, Ben spotted a fin emerging from the water a few meters out. It was a dolphin. The dolphin swam fast, and when it was next to Poseidon, it leaped into the air and through the water hoop. It then remained by Poseidon's side, as though greeting an old friend. As Poseidon stroked the dolphin's head, he explained what it meant to be the god of the sea. One of his duties was to protect people from sea monsters. He had just finished dealing with a group of them. Unfortunately, during this encounter, the trident had flown out of his grasp. Poseidon couldn't leave this spot because he had to keep an eye out for more. Besides, there were also other important tasks that he needed to take care of in the water. His work as god of the sea kept him busy. This was why he needed Ben's help to find his trident. For a moment, Ben was speechless. The man really was Poseidon, the ancient god of myth and legend. He remembered what he'd seen earlier, a golden stick flying in the air. When he mentioned this, Poseidon nodded. Whenever the trident wasn't in his hands, it turned into a golden staff that almost looked like a regular stick. The god seemed thoughtful as he looked at Ben. Then he asked, "What is your name, young man?" Ben replied that his name was Benjamin, or Ben to his friends. Poseidon smiled and said, "Ben, I can offer you something in return for your help. It will be of great value for your work and travels. There is a magical parchment that contains a map of this whole planet and its waters. You just need to tap on the specific water that you want to visit, and it will take you there in an instant." Poseidon put his hand in the sea and pulled out the magical map. He told Ben to place the tip of his right index finger wherever he wanted to go. Ben had been to Hawaii several times, so he thought it would be an easy place to confirm the parchment's powers. He carefully tapped his finger on the shores of Honolulu. In an instant, Ben felt his body being smoothly transported to the turquoise waters he knew so well. He had been there so many times that the landscape was unmistakable. Golden sand, palm trees, the rise and fall of lush hills in the distance. Completely awestruck, Ben realized that Poseidon was telling the truth about the parchment. It really did have magical powers. After tapping the map once again, Ben found himself instantly transported back to the beach at Porto Cristo. The journey was so quick and smooth. It was as though he'd never left. Ben thanked Poseidon for offering him this exceptionally valuable gift. It would be so useful for his future travels. And of course, he agreed to help Poseidon with his search for the trident. The god of the sea explained that Ben wouldn't have to do it alone. Because of the importance of the mission, he would be helped by a special creature. Her name was Crystal. She was a fish when she was in the water, but turned into a bright firefly when she was in the air. Poseidon explained that Crystal had a special talent for finding precious objects. She would let Ben know where to look for the trident, and she wouldn't stop until they found it. In that moment, a beautiful fish appeared in the water. She was as clear as the ocean, but she also had touches of emerald green and turquoise blue on her scales and fins. Somehow, she even glowed in the water. The beauty of her fish form was hypnotizing. As Crystal rose to the surface and came out of the water, she swiftly transformed into a mesmerizing firefly. Her wings were thin, but strong at the same time. She could fly high and fast. And the most beautiful part of her was the light that she emitted. It was bright, but not dazzling. It was a warm and reassuring glow that made Ben feel like he wasn't alone on this journey. He sensed that Crystal was more powerful than she looked, and he knew in his heart that he would be safe if he followed her magnificent colors wherever she went. Ben walked back toward the shore, with Crystal flying by his side. When they got to the beach, Crystal flew quickly to the far end and hovered in midair. This was where they had to start looking for the trident. But with everything that had happened this afternoon, Ben was starting to feel tired. He just needed a second of rest. He lay down on the beach and felt his head and neck sinking into the warm sand. Then his back, his arms, and then his legs and feet. The sand molded to the shape of his body. Even the smallest grain of sand seemed to be massaging his tired muscles. Ben took a deep breath in and let the fresh and salty ocean breeze fill his lungs. As he exhaled, he imagined all the tiredness leaving his body. Crystal came toward him, her firefly wings shining in the sunlight. She seemed to understand that he needed a brief moment of rest. She flew over his forehead and hovered there, glowing warmly and calmly. Ben could feel the glow spreading through his face and head. There was something special about Crystal's glow. It made him feel like every thought was leaving his mind, as it filled with pure relaxation. Ben breathed slowly and deeply, feeling completely at ease. Next, Crystal hovered over Ben's stomach. His belly was rumbling, and she could tell that he was hungry. But somehow, she managed to create a blanket of warm glow that covered his stomach. While she did this, Ben's mind was filled with images of his favorite food. They felt so real that he could taste delicious fruit on his tongue, and his belly was starting to feel full. Just as he was beginning to feel thirsty, a fresh river of water seemed to flow through his throat and body. Ben felt so relaxed now that he wasn't tired, hungry, or thirsty. He didn't know how, but thanks to Crystal, he was feeling completely rejuvenated. Ben took a deep breath as he slowly got to his feet. When he thanked Crystal, she almost seemed to have understood him, as her wings glowed more brightly. Feeling ready to walk on, Ben continued along the beach, with Crystal leading the way. Ben was wearing sandals, and with each step, he could feel the smooth sand moving through his toes. After walking a little further along the shore, Ben followed Crystal into a dense area of trees and other plants. As he stepped into the shade, he noted how dark it was inside the grove. He couldn't see much at first, but this almost didn't matter to him. The little forest was full of herbal scents. Ben felt like he was swimming in a warm cup of calming tea. Closing his eyes, he breathed in deeply. He didn't want to miss any of these soothing scents. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Crystal was glowing brighter than ever. Feeling calm and relaxed, he followed the magical firefly as she made her way through the woods. Ben and Crystal carefully looked for the golden staff in the sand and in the lower plants and bushes. Then they searched the taller trees, like the live oaks and palms. Crystal flew to the highest parts and moved through the branches, while Ben searched from the ground. Sometimes he would climb a tree as high as he could and look for the trident there. But there was nothing to find, not a single shimmer of gold. As they left the wooded area, Ben glanced at his watch and saw that it was already around 2 in the morning. Perhaps it would be best to take a small break to sleep. But then he realized that his hotel room was too far away from the beach. He didn't want to waste time going all the way back. Just as he was wondering what to do next, Crystal started glowing and flew along the shore. Ben followed her into a small cave next to the beach. As he looked around, he understood why she had brought him here. It was the perfect place to rest for a few hours. He lay down on the sand, and Crystal emitted her warmest light yet. Ben didn't feel cold at all inside the cave. It was warm and cozy. The sand was as comfortable as a bed, and he could feel Crystal's glow blanketing him, just like the soft sheets in his hotel room. After a good night's rest, Ben would be ready to continue his search for the trident. But right now, he was so tired that he could think of nothing but sleep. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath in. His breathing gradually settled into a natural rhythm, just like the waves of the ocean. And soon, Ben was fast asleep. Ben woke up slowly. He could feel the sensation of wings brushing his skin. When he opened his eyes, he saw Crystal flying above him in the form of a glowing firefly. The space was gradually filling with light. From this spot, near the cave entrance, Ben could see that the sun was rising. It was time to wake up. To Ben's surprise, he felt very well rested and ready to continue yesterday's search for Poseidon's trident. When Crystal flew out of the cave, Ben got up and followed. As he stepped outside, he saw that the sun wasn't fully risen yet. Its edges were touching the water, covering it with soft golden shimmers. The sky looked like a canvas that had been painted from bottom to top. Near the horizon, the sun's golden glow resembled orange paintbrush strokes. Orange then transitioned to a light yellow, followed by a soft blue. The top part of the sky was like a painting made of deep blue strokes. It was a beautiful sunrise, and it filled Ben with the hope that comes with the start of a new day. He felt so calm that he stood there for a moment, admiring the view. Ben also noticed that he was surrounded by a pleasing symphony of birds chirping and distant waves rising and falling. As he enjoyed this relaxing soundscape, he took a deep breath in. The early morning scent of the beach filled his lungs. He closed his eyes, savoring the calming atmosphere. A moment later, Crystal was back at Ben's side, fluttering eagerly. From her movements, Ben understood that he had to follow her. Crystal guided him to a spot under the trees. The ground was covered with fresh fruit. There were piles of apricots, oranges, and grapes, as well as a big watermelon. Ben's eyes lit up. He thanked Crystal and began to eat. Each bite of fruit seemed to melt in his mouth. The apricots were deliciously sweet. The oranges were the juiciest ones he had ever tasted. Then there were the grapes, so soft and sweet, and the big watermelon, which was juicy and refreshing. The strong scents of all the fruits made them taste even better. It wasn't just a breakfast, but a banquet. When he had finished, Crystal started flying toward the sea. At first, Ben was puzzled. He didn't understand what she wanted. Then Crystal went into the water and transformed into her other form. colorless fish. Ben walked towards the shallows and kept following Crystal. The little fish had started glowing, with wavy rays emanating from her body. Once he was deep enough, Ben put his face underwater, hoping that he would be able to understand Crystal a little better like this. What he saw below the surface was amazing. Crystal's colors were even more vibrant underwater. She was captivating. Ben gazed at the shades of sparkling blue and green in astonishment. But then he saw something even more magnificent. The rays of light that were coming from her body were also glowing, and they pointed in different directions. At last, Ben understood. Crystal wanted them to explore those different areas of the ocean, but for that, he would need diving gear. Fortunately, he remembered that he'd seen a diving school not so far from the shore. Without delay, Ben rented all the equipment that he needed. And in no time, he was back at the ocean, where Crystal was floating near the surface. They were ready to begin their search for the trident. Ben touched one of Crystal's glowing rays to show which direction he thought they should go fast. And right away, they were both transported to another spot in the ocean. It was just like Poseidon's magical map with its powers of teleportation. Ben could see that they were now far from the shore. But he was a trained diver, so he felt comfortable and safe being there. In addition, these waters were particularly clear, and they offered good visibility. As Ben and Crystal dived to the depths of this area, the light became dimmer, but they could still see their surroundings well, thanks to the bright rays of sunlight that penetrated the water. Diving deeper, they came across several marine species, such as eels, tuna, and damselfish. There was even an octopus, which moved its tentacles in such a graceful way. The suction cups that covered the tentacles looked like palms. What an elegant creature, Ben thought. As they got deeper, Ben and Crystal found bright pink coral reefs. Their detailed patterns and structures made them look like architecture or a work of art. It was here that Ben discovered his favorite creature, the nudibranch, also commonly known as sea slugs. He loved their beautiful mix of exotic and vivid colors. His favorite nudibranch looks like something painted by a famous artist. It was lime green with canary yellow dots Its head was decorated with larger, light blue spots, surrounded by yellow rings. Although Ben went diving frequently, all the beauty that he saw underwater took his breath away. He experienced this sense of awe every time. Ben stared at this coral reef and its sea slugs for a while, contemplating the wonders of nature. It was only when Crystal approached him that he remembered what they were there for. Ben started looking through the reefs, but found nothing. They even dived to the very bottom of the area. But when he dug through the sand, Ben couldn't see any sign of the golden trident at all. Crystal then emitted a new glowing ray. When Ben touched it, he found himself suddenly transported to the entrance of an underwater cavern. The smooth teleportation still felt surreal, but he was getting used to it by now. The underwater cavern had wide holes where he could enter and explore. Small, colorful fish swam around this area in groups. Ben swam slowly so as not to startle them. Once he was inside the cabin, he started looking around. First, he slid his hands across the walls, both inside and outside. Then he dived to the bottom of the cabin and dug through the sand. But again, there was no trident to be found. Crystal swam towards him and emitted yet another glowing ray. After touching it, Ben was surprised to find himself sitting on the beach. Crystal had turned back into a firefly, but instead of guiding Ben to the next spot, she just hovered beside him, fluttering in midair. Perhaps she was thinking about where to search next. In the meantime, Ben took off the diving gear. Just as he had finished, Crystal started fluttering in front of him, glowing intermittently like a flashing light. This had to mean something, since Crystal had never glowed like that before. Maybe she knew where the trident was. A moment later, Crystal started flying along the beach, her wings still flashing. Ben got up and followed her. As they headed into the town, Ben wondered where Crystal was taking him. When she finally stopped, hovering in the air, Ben looked around in confusion. Behind him, he could see a parking lot and signs indicating taxis and bus stops. There was also a large building with a ticket stand, as well as souvenirs and food. It looked like a tourist attraction. Then Ben noticed a sign pointing to a set of mysterious caves. Apparently, Crystal wanted him to enter these caves. Ben followed the sign, which indicated that the entrance to the cave was a few steps ahead. Still accompanied by Crystal, he walked down a stone staircase until he came to a short, narrow tunnel. It was a bit dark, but there were handrails that helped Ben walk safely through the tunnel. At the end, he encountered a black metal gate. He tried to open it, but it was locked. This didn't seem to be a problem for Crystal, though. She simply emitted a glowing ray of light that traveled to the gate. As soon as the glow touched the door, it swung open, and they went through carefully. Once they were on the other side, Ben stopped abruptly, and his eyes widened. This had to be the most beautiful place he had ever seen. They were inside a long cave. Its interior was full of hanging stalactites and stalagmites that emerged from the ground. Ben knew that these formations were deposits of different minerals, and that they often looked similar to icicles. But he had never seen them in person. The whole ceiling was covered with ancient stalactites of different widths and lengths. Here, it felt as if time had stood still. There was also a large body of water in the cave. The water was so clear that Ben could see right to the bottom, and the surface reflected the hanging stalactites on the ceiling. The atmosphere was enhanced by the cave's interior lighting, which had been thoughtfully placed to highlight the natural beauty of the space. The combination of the rock formations, the water, and the lighting made this place look like a dream. It was mesmerizing. Ben stood there, speechless, as he gazed at his surroundings. The atmosphere inside the cave was cool and damp compared to the summer temperature outside. But to Ben, it felt wonderfully refreshing. Silence reigned inside the cave, apart from the sound of dripping water. Ben immersed himself in the cave's atmosphere with all of his senses. He felt so comfortable and calm as he savored the tranquility of this dreamy place. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, determined to remember every single detail of this wonderful yet mysterious cavern. Just then, he felt Crystal's wings fluttering by his ear. This brought him back to the reality of why he was standing there. Crystal's glow was still shining intermittently. Her movements suggested that she wanted Ben to start exploring the cave. He walked slowly and ran his hands around the walls. The light brown stone was textured and grooved and a bit damp. He observed the ceiling carefully, trying to detect any golden shimmers. He kept walking and looking around, but he couldn't find anything. When they were deeper inside the cave, Ben noticed that Crystal's intermittent glowing had become quicker. There were shorter pauses between each glow. It seemed to be acting like a radar, detecting the trident's location. This gave Ben an idea. As he moved around, he could observe how Crystal's glow pattern responded. He saw that it became slower in some spots, while it pulsated more quickly in other areas. When Ben got closer to the water, the light flashed even more quickly. This suggested that the trident could very likely be in the water. Ben carefully stepped into the pool. It was clear and shallow. Crystal turned into her fish form and swam next to him. Moving forward through the water, Ben looked for any signs of the golden trident. Crystal's rays were still glowing quickly. As the water got deeper, the cave became a bit wider. It wasn't just a pool, but a magnificent subterranean lake. Ben looked around in amazement. He could never have imagined that the cave would hide such a treasure. Thankfully, the waters were still as clear as before. Beside him, Crystal was glowing, her rays pulsating even faster. Ben was sure that the trident had to be somewhere in this lake. Diving down a few meters, he found that the bottom was mostly covered in marine plants. This made it hard to spot anything that might have sunk to the lake's depths. Some of the plants were short, making it easier to look through them, but the majority were long and leafy. They grew upwards like thin, elongated leaves that danced slowly from side to side. And they were so tall that Ben had to swim through the leaves, using his hands to separate them, and then reaching down to search the bottom of the lake. As much as Ben looked, he couldn't find anything. But Crystal's glow was constant now, and he knew that the trident had to be near. He swam a bit further, moving closer to the center of the lake. Then he took a deep breath and dived to the bottom. Here, he saw a bunch of leaves that were tangled around something. He got closer, and as the leaves moved gently with the water's flow, he saw a golden shimmer. Right away, he started untangling the leaves with his fingers. Little by little, a staff made of gold revealed itself. Although it looked like an ordinary stick, it had to be Poseidon's missing trident. Ben grabbed it and swam back to the surface. Crystal's glow was constant now. She examined the trident for a moment, swimming around it in circles. Then she stopped and generated 3 glowing rays that went upwards. They resembled the 3 prongs of a trident. After this, Crystal's glow faded. This could only mean one thing. The staff was indeed Poseidon's golden trident. Ben felt so happy and relieved. Crystal emitted a final glowing ray that pointed in the direction of the sea. When Ben touched it, they were both instantly transported to the spot in the ocean where they had first met. Standing tall in the middle of the waves was Poseidon. He was just as Ben remembered him, an impressive, muscular figure with a long, tangled beard. But this time, Poseidon was smiling. Ben stepped toward him and placed the golden staff in Poseidon's outstretched hands. When it touched the god's fingers, the staff became longer, and a 3-pronged structure with sharp points emerged at one end. The trident looked powerful, and in Poseidon's hands, glorious. His loyal companion, Crystal, swam to his side and remained there. "Thank you, Ben," said the god of the sea. "You have proven your bravery, honesty, and skills, and you are more than deserving of the magical parchment." Poseidon retrieved the parchment from the water and gave it to Ben. As soon as he touched it, Ben could feel the power emanating from it. "I know you will make good use of this valuable tool," Poseidon said, "but I must leave now." And then he added, "Good luck on your voyages, Ben." Ben watched as Poseidon and Crystal started to swim away, further into the ocean. He called out after them, thanking them both for everything. In the distance, Poseidon turned and smiled. Crystal briefly leaped out of the water and twirled in the air before diving down again. Ben felt reassured that they had both heard him. Now that this adventure had ended, Ben realized just how tired he felt in both mind and body. The exhaustion was like a weight. He went back to the hotel and made his way to his room. Here, he felt the peace of his cozy little nest again. After taking a relaxing, warm shower, Ben made himself comfortable in bed. As he sank into the mattress, he stared at the ceiling, reflecting on all the magical things that he had seen during the last couple of days. He felt completely exhausted, but at the same time, he was deeply grateful that he'd had the chance to meet Poseidon and to help him with something so important. He was also grateful for the time that he had spent with such a magnificent creature as Crystal. Ben felt truly fulfilled. A feeling of deep relaxation ran through his body. As he thought of the magical parchment, Ben imagined all the adventures that he would be able to experience with its help. Traveling from one ocean to another, and little by little, Ben peacefully drifted off to sleep. To begin with, let's look at the streets and buildings where everyday people live. Lots of houses are joined together in long rows, with little yards and gardens behind them. Built with sand-colored stone and topped with golden roof tiles, they shine like treasure in the daylight. It's a beautiful day, and at the time we see it, in late afternoon, the sun glows warm and bright in a clear blue sky. The light shines on the people below, who wander about the stone paths and cobbled roads. Here we see townsfolk going about their day, dressed in plain, old-fashioned clothing. There's a friendly-faced woman out walking her dog, and coming towards her from the opposite direction, a group of merry children walks home from school with books in hand. When they cross paths, the children wave and say hello to the woman, pausing to pet her dog's fluffy head before continuing on their way. On a different street, other people are still at work, pushing wooden carts along the road, filled with goods of every kind. One man sells flowers, and his cart is bursting with color. The smell of those pretty blooms trails behind him everywhere he goes, filling the air with the most wonderfully sweet perfume. It travels with him past the golden houses where parents and children are beginning to return home, and into the high street where the town's best shops are clustered together. Soon he arrives at his own shop, where he pulls up his cart. The few flowers that he still has will go back inside to be sold tomorrow, except for a bouquet of bright red roses that he will take home for his wife. As he packs everything away for the evening, he makes happy chit-chat with the baker next door. She, too, is out at the shop front, readying her horses and cart for her final delivery before heading home. Her last stop of the day is where she'll take her largest order. It's a request from the palace for 3 boxes of freshly baked bread, pastries, donuts, and other delicious sweet treats. Let's join her now as she sits down upon the open, cushioned bench behind 2 magnificent chestnut-brown horses. With her wooden cart filled with mouth-watering delights, she pulls gently at the reins and starts on her way. The sound of horses' hooves echoes through the streets as she heads out of town, humming a happy tune and waving to the people that she passes. As she travels, the rows of crowded shop fronts fade into the distance, and the land around her becomes green and alive. The countryside surrounding the town is rich and verdant. Aside from the occasional farmhouse or shepherd herding their flock of sheep, there are very few people here. It's wonderfully peaceful, and the air smells fresh and clean, even more so as the road curves uphill, where a lush forest borders it on both sides. Apart from the clopping of hooves and wheels upon the road, the only sounds come from the trees swaying in the breeze and the gentle twittering of birds returning to their woodland nests. Eventually, the road straightens out and the forest opens up, revealing the royal palace at the top of the hill. It's exactly what you'd expect from a fairy tale castle. A colossal fortress of white walls and pinkish grey roofs, with a huge silver gate at its front. At either side of the gate stand 2 guardsmen, wearing pristine uniforms of silver and purple. They look very official and a little bit serious, until they see the familiar face of the baker approaching. Immediately, their expressions change, and they wave to her cheerfully. Then they open the gate and allow her through. Once inside, the horses follow a neat pathway surrounded by the beautiful royal gardens. There are plants and flowers of every color, and stunning trees reaching up towards the sky. At the front of the castle is a handsome white fountain, with water spraying from the mouth of an elegant marble statue. Behind it, 2 staircases rise towards each other, meeting in the middle on a balcony where the massive front doors stand open. Bringing the horses to a stop between the fountain and the steps, the baker hops off her seat and greets the kitchen maids who are waiting there. They wear black dresses with frilly white aprons pinned to their fronts, and their hair is hidden beneath lacy white hats. As always, they are delighted to see the baker and her boxes of sweet treats. They stroke the noses of the friendly horses before lifting the boxes from the cart. And then they wave goodbye as the baker takes up the reins once more and heads back out through the palace gates. Evening is approaching now, though the baker and her horses are returning home for the day. The staff of the palace kitchen still have work to do, and so they carry the boxes of baked goods inside. Then they help the cook unpack everything and put the final touches on tonight's royal meal. Rolls of fresh golden bread sit upon silver trays beside bowls of hot, creamy soup. This is the first of many courses to be served tonight. Carefully now, the staff exit the kitchen, walking gracefully across a panel of purple carpet into the main hall of the palace. Here, the soup and bread are served to the royal family, who are already seated at a long marble table against a backdrop of huge arched windows. This is where we meet the prince, his mother, the queen, and his father, the king. The queen is resplendent in a gown of ruby red velvet, and the men wear stylish suits of blue and silver. They each wear a crown decorated in jewels in every color of the rainbow. The baker's golden rolls are a particular favorite of the family. In fact, though it's not really proper table etiquette, all 3 of them like to dip the buttered, crispy bread into their soup. In between mouthfuls, they make pleasant conversation, discussing the events of the day and any pressing matters of the kingdom. Naturally, it isn't long before the topic of marriage comes up. The king and queen ask their son if he's found a suitable bride yet. And, just like always, he tells them that no, he hasn't. The prince has searched far and wide, traveling all across the land to find a worthy princess. But so far, he hasn't succeeded. He's met lots of very nice ladies, to be sure, but none that felt like the right princess for him. Seeing his unhappiness, his mother tells him not to worry. The right person will come along, probably when he least expects it. A moment after the queen has spoken, the sound of thunder rumbles outside the castle. Through the massive windows behind the table, the family can see a darkened sky filled with deep silver clouds. The hallway is lit with a sudden flash of white lightning, illuminating the beauty of the grand hall. This is swiftly followed by the sound of heavy rain pouring down over the thick palace walls and upon the ground. It's a welcome sight for the royal family, who are particularly fond of a good storm. And so, there is little conversation as the next few courses are eaten. In the glow of soft golden candlelight, the family savors one delicious bite after another, all the while enjoying the sounds of the wild and chaotic weather. Not far from the table, a huge fire roars to life in the large stone hearth, which is both tall and wide. Golden flames fill the large hall with warmth and light, and the sound of logs crackling amplifies the contrast between the cold, wet outdoors and the blissfully comfortable indoors. By the time dessert arrives, a treacle sponge pudding soaked in hot yellow custard, their spirits are high. By now, the storm is dying down. The thunder and lightning have stopped, and the rain has faded to a gentle pitter-patter. It taps at the palace walls and rooftops, trickling down the hall's great windows in an assortment of shapes and patterns. The king, having finished his pudding, stands beside the window, looking through the rivulets of water. As he does most nights, he is admiring his vast, beautiful city down below. Only tonight, the king's quiet thoughts are interrupted by the approach of a guardsman. He hears dumb footsteps move across the thin carpet panel, and then the marble floor tiles in his direction. The guardsman explains that a princess has arrived at the palace gates, seeking shelter from the storm. The king beckons him to invite her inside. When she comes in, he offers her his own seat nearest the fireplace and asks that food be brought to her at once. The woman that enters the hall is drenched from head to toe. Her hair is a mess of wet tangles, and raindrops drip from her nose to her cloak. To the royal family, she looks very little like a princess, but although all are impressed by her manners, as she thanks them repeatedly for their kindness and generosity. They watch her with curious eyes as she dips bread rolls into her soup, just as they did earlier. She only pauses to comment on how tasty the rolls are, and to gush about how beautiful the storm was, though it's clear she would rather have seen it from inside the palace. And then, as she sits drying by the fireplace, she seems to become more lovely and princess-like with each passing minute. The prince is charmed. After all, few of the princesses he's met across the land have seemed as kind and genuine as this one. And none, he thinks, would be so adventurous as to go out walking such a distance in the rain. There's something about this woman that seems different and special. His mother, however, isn't so sure. She is accustomed to meeting princesses at balls and dinners, you see, when they're dressed in their finest gowns. Usually, they have tiaras on their heads and a gaggle of royal relatives by their sides. But this girl arrived alone, with no tiara or crown on her wet, messy hair, and dripping water all over the palace floors and carpets. Certainly, she has the manners and graciousness of a princess, and her son seems to have taken an instant liking to the young woman. But for all they know, this stranger might be an imposter, an actress simply pretending to be royal. In order to test whether the princess is really who she claims to be, the queen concocts a plan. Before bedtime, when everyone else is sipping hot cocoa with marshmallows around the fireplace, she sets her plan into motion. Following her instructions, the maids collect mattresses and duvets from 19 of the other guest rooms and bring them to the one where the young woman will be staying. The queen meets them there in the very grand room, holding in her hand a single green pea. Watch now as she places the pea in the middle of the mattress, and then steps back as the 19 other mattresses are placed on top, followed by 20 duvets and several fluffy pillows. What a sight this is! A bed so high it almost touches the ceiling of this grand bedroom. It's so high, in fact, that before her plan is complete, the queen asks for a ladder to be placed beside it. Without one, the young woman won't be able to climb into bed. With everything now in place, the king, queen, and prince all go to their rooms, looking forward to a long and restful sleep. Their visitor is escorted to the beautiful guest room, where her mouth drops open at the sight of the incredible bed, stands beside it in her silky white pajamas that she borrowed from the Queen, and counts up the number of mattresses and duvets that rise above her. 20 of each in total. What a treat this will be, she whispers to herself dreamily. Then she climbs up the ladder beside the bed and crawls in at the very top, snuggling into the warm, cozy blankets and closing her eyes. The next morning, the princess awakens after a night that was anything but restful. As lovely as the bed was, she couldn't seem to get comfortable and woke up at different times throughout the night, feeling as if something hard were pressing into her back. It was not a good night's sleep. However, she's not the kind of woman to dwell on complaints or grumbles, so she climbs down the ladder, ready to greet a new day with a smile on her face. This is made much easier by a lovely warm bubble bath in a tub the size of a small swimming pool. She floats about in the soapy water, washing away the tiredness with a velvet soft sponge and a range of luxurious soaps. Her hair gets a wash too, with a creamy pink shampoo that smells of delicious strawberries. Then she lays back, singing a lovely song and enjoying the warmth of the water. By the time she steps out of the bath and into a fluffy robe, her sleepless night is all but forgotten. Returning to her bedroom, she finds that her outfit from yesterday has been washed, dried, and ironed, and hung up ready to wear on the wardrobe door. She pulls it on, one piece at a time, delighting in the softness of the fresh, dry fabric against her skin. It's a lovely dress, reaching just above the floor, and sea blue in color, a perfect match for its owner's eyes. The fabric is a rich velvet that's pulled in at the waist, where silver-colored silk is tied. It puffs out at the sleeves, and a silver thread decorates the edges in a wave-like pattern. Clean and dry, in her elegant dress, the princess feels much more like herself. And once a maid has kindly dried and styled her hair, pinning it up with pow-tipped clips, she looks every bit the princess that she is. In fact, the royal family are quite taken aback when she arrives for breakfast in the main hall, looking so very different from the last time they saw her. She carries the fragrance of soap and strawberries upon her hair and skin. It wafts over the table like a blanket of sweetness. Even the Queen is impressed. Of course, she has to be sure that this stranger, as lovely as she might be, is actually a real princess. She has to find out if her experiment worked. so, as the family are tucking into their morning croissants, buttery and golden, as the baker always makes them, the queen begins to inquire as to how the girl slept. The princess wishes to be honest without seeming impolite. She sips on her freshly squeezed orange juice as she thinks of what to say. "Your Majesty," she begins, "I have never slept in a bed so tall and grand as that one. Just climbing up into it was a wonderful adventure." Then she clears her throat a little nervously and adds, "But in all honesty, I did not sleep well. No matter what position I was in, I seemed to be lying on something hard and uncomfortable. I can't begin to think of what was in that bed." And with these words, the queen laughs heartily, joined soon after by the king, who already knows of his wife's clever plan. The queen then explains that what the girl felt was a tiny green pea, which proves that she must indeed be a princess. Only a real royal princess would be so sensitive that she might detect the presence of a solitary pea between 20 mattresses and 20 duvets. At this, the table erupts into laughter, followed by many heartfelt apologies from the queen, forever doubting the princess's sincerity. "I suppose it might help if I were to wear my crown," the princess says. "But alas, it's so heavy that I only bring it out for special occasions." Around her at the breakfast table, the king, queen, and prince each wear crowns on their heads. And it's true, they're as heavy as they are beautiful. "You're so right, my dear," says the king. "It really is a heavy thing. I don't know why we wear ours so often. Just habit, I suppose." And with that, the king lifts his hands to his head and takes off his golden, jewel-encrusted crown. He sets it down on the table, grinning from ear to ear, delighted to be free of the extra weight. Seeing his relief, the queen and prince follow suit, taking off their crowns and placing them down on the marble table. This is the first of many breakfasts that the merry foursome will share together. Even without his mother's help, the prince had already decided that this girl was a princess, and that she is the one he's meant to marry. He knew it last night, with her hair dripping wet, as she dipped bread rolls into her soup, and as her eyes lit up as she talked about the storm. Just as his mother had suggested, the right girl had turned up when he least expected it. And this is where our story ends, though it's only the beginning for the young prince and princess. Over the next few months, they will spend a great deal of time together, growing to love each other more with each passing day. Eventually, they will marry in the main hall of the royal palace, its floors scattered with red roses, provided by the florist we met earlier. Their wedding will be attended by everyone in the city. They'll call it the social event of the year. And to celebrate, it will feature the most spectacular, towering wedding cake, designed by the baker herself. How people will gasp when they see its 20 tiers of cake and 20 more of icing, created in honor of that most unusual bed. As for the famous pea, it remained somehow unsquished, despite the many mattresses and duvets that sat upon it. And it will find a new home in the city's Royal Museum. There, the pea will rest on a pillow of purple velvet for any and all to gaze upon when they visit. Long ago, in a faraway city, lived a boy named Idris. He spent most of the day at school, and the rest of his time was divided between his friends and family. After school, he would roam the streets of the city with his friends. He'd explore the alleys and markets and play ball games in the dusty square. And then, when the sun went down, he would head back home to the large mud brick house where he lived with his extended family. On the top floor was the bedroom Idris shared with his two older brothers. Downstairs were his parents' bedrooms and the rooms belonging to his aunt and grandparents. The ground floor was the largest, and the area where the family spent most of their time. This was the location of the store and the workshop. For generations, Idris's family had made and sold the most exquisite carpets in the city. People would come from across the land to commission a decorative carpet or to choose from those on display. They came in all sizes, colors, and designs. There were small prayer mats in green and gold. Displayed on the walls of the shop were scarlet rugs with gorgeous swirling patterns made from metallic thread. And at the back, rolled up tightly, were the heavy, expensive carpets that were too big to put on display. When unrolled, they showed dazzling floral designs and patterns within patterns. When Idris returned home, he liked to walk through the shop, greeting his aunt who worked at the counter. Then, after passing through this treasure trove of carpets, he would go through the beaded curtain doorway at the back of the room. He liked the cool, ticklish sensation of the beads on his skin and the musical sound that the curtain made as he passed through. The room at the back was the wax shop. This was where his parents and elder brothers were hard at work right now, sitting at the looms. They were so focused on their work, it was as if they were under a spell. Idris sometimes felt reluctant to interrupt their trance. He would stand and watch them for a while, admiring their skill. At the moment, the family were working on 2 large carpets that had been specially commissioned by a wealthy man from a neighboring city. They would take months to complete. Idris's parents worked at one loom, while his brothers sat at another. Both looms were vertical, and the 4 family members sat cross-legged on floor cushions, weaving by hand. As their fingers moved swiftly between the long strands of wool, it looked as though they were playing a stringed instrument. Their movements were so graceful, and Idris found himself mesmerized. He knew from experience how difficult the work was, requiring patience, creativity, and painstaking attention to detail. It also called for a certain kind of dexterity, which Idris didn't have. He tried to learn many times, sitting at the loom while his parents, grandparents, or brothers patiently tried to teach him. Idris had already accepted that he was unlikely to become a carpet maker. When he grew up, he would do something else. He wasn't sure what, as his ideas changed from one day to the next. Sometimes he daydreamed about life as a traveling merchant, riding a horse from city to city, through mountains and deserts. Or he would imagine a career as an astronomer, studying the planets and discovering the secrets of the universe. Or perhaps he would simply stay here with his family, selling the beautiful carpets that they created. That could be nice too, he thought, remaining in the place he loved and with the people he loved. But the future still seemed far away. He had plenty of time to work out what he wanted to do when he grew up. In the meantime, he was happy to watch his family at work and to drift from room to room as he waited for dinner. Tonight, his grandmother was preparing his favorite rice dish with spices and vegetables. While his parents and brothers put the finishing touches to the day's work, Idris passed through the rattling bead curtain once again. He always enjoyed wandering up and down the densely packed aisles of the carpet shop, gazing at the products that were ready for sale. There were so many of them, and they were all so beautiful. He ran his finger over the soft wall, tracing the maze-like patterns from the edge to the center. It felt soothing, following the curving line all the way to the middle. When Idris touched the carpets, he sometimes thought that the varying colors and patterns felt different to each other. Of course, they were almost all the same material. The yarn was made from sheep's wool and dyed with natural colorings, like roots and berries. But when he brushed his finger over a rug, he felt different sensations depending on the part he touched. As his finger moved from crimson to indigo, or petal to vine, something changed. He felt a pleasant shiver running through him, like a cool breeze on a warm night. There was something magical about these carpets. His eye was always drawn to one carpet in particular. Hanging on the back wall was a large rectangular rug. The plush background was a deep burgundy red, but the carpet seemed to feature all the colors of the rainbow: emerald green, saffron yellow, and so many others. Certain details shimmered in silver, gold, and pearlescent white. It looked as though a single moonbeam had woven its way through the carpet, making the patterns shine. The carpet's central design depicted the tree of life, a beautiful golden tree with countless shining branches, dripping with fruit. In each of the four corners was a small, richly detailed garden, contained by a decorative wall. What Idris loved most about this carpet was that each garden was slightly different. From a distance, the design looked perfectly symmetrical. There were 4 identical gardens, each with an identical fountain in the middle. But close up, subtle differences emerged. One garden resembled an orchard of figs, while another was filled with pomegranate trees. The animals also changed from one garden to another, from goats to hens, and horses to peacocks. Even the grass varied. The garden in one corner had vertical lines of golden grass, while the garden below had silver waves that resembled an ocean. As a young boy, Idris had spent hours gazing at this carpet, hypnotized by the intricate details. As his gaze drifted from one garden to the next, he wondered which was his favorite. One day, when he grew up, perhaps he would have his very own garden, with a fountain, peacocks, and pomegranate trees. Now that he was a little older, Idris still liked to daydream about the gardens. But he also found himself thinking about the person who had woven them, his great-grandmother. According to family legend, she had created this masterpiece single-handedly in just a few months, after the inspiration came to her in a dream. Idris had never met his great-grandmother, but when he admired her creation, he felt a sense of connection to her. Even though he didn't share her talent, he felt proud to be related to someone who could create a thing of such beauty. Unlike the other carpets on display, the garden rug was not for sale. It was priceless, a precious family heirloom. Even if a wealthy customer came to the shop offering all the gold in the kingdom, they would never part with it. Idris was glad to know that his favorite carpet would always be here, with pride of place on the back wall. He could look at it whenever he liked, lingering over every dreamy detail. Later that night, when the rest of his family was sleeping, Idris found himself thinking of the carpet once again. Random images from the day drifted through his mind. The sun-washed square where he'd sat and talked with his friends after school. The colorful baskets of freshly dyed wool drying in the sun on the patio, and the woven images of the 4 gardens, each one a small, glittering paradise. Idris wasn't tired enough to sleep just yet, but he was happy to lie in bed, watching the slow procession of images passing dreamily through his mind. The room was quiet, except for the soft snoring of his brothers and the distant call of a night bird beyond the window. It felt as though the bird was the only other living creature awake at this time. When it was taking a little longer than usual to fall asleep, Idris often liked to get out of bed for a while. He'd walk around the house, take a deep breath of fresh air on the roof terrace, and clear his head. It was a kind of break which left him feeling refreshed, yet somehow sleepier than before. When he went back to bed, he usually fell asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. So, after lying awake for a while, Idris decided to get out of bed. He lit a candle, put on a pair of light slippers, and quietly crossed the room, taking care not to wake his brothers. Then he slowly walked downstairs until he was standing in the darkened shop. In the midnight hush, the shop felt like a shrine. It was completely silent, and the only light came from Idris's flickering candle and the glow of the moon through a single window. The silver moonbeams seemed to land lightly on the stacked carpets. Noticing the way the light fell, Idris smiled. Perhaps the moon shared his instinct to be gentle and move softly. In a moment, he would go outside. It was warm tonight, and he wanted to stand on the terrace and savor the cool breeze before going back to bed. But first, he would allow himself one last look at the garden carpet displayed on the wall. He loved the idea of having it entirely to himself. There was no one sitting behind the counter, and there were no chattering customers to distract him. It was just him, alone, transfixed by the splendor of the woven tree and gardens. Time seemed to stand still. Everything looked different in the candlelight, with shifting, blurring colors and optical illusions. At one point, the carpet itself seemed to move in the breeze. A gentle wave spread through the fabric, causing the patterned leaves to ripple like water. Idris blinked and looked around in confusion. The air was still, and the window was closed. Besides, it seemed unlikely that a gentle night breeze could move a heavy carpet like this one. He must have been sleepier than he'd realized to imagine such a thing. Time to go to bed, he told himself. But when Idris looked at the carpet once more, he was sure that it was moving, gently rippling, then billowing out from the wall. He stepped back and watched in amazement as the carpet moved smoothly and silently away from the wall. Now it was floating right in front of him, hovering mid-air. Idris blinked and rubbed his eyes. He must be dreaming. But there it was, right in front of him. He reached out to touch the soft, familiar fibers of the carpet and realized it was really happening. The carpet was floating, flying. Now it was moving towards the stairs. It looked like a vast butterfly or strange sea creature, swimming through the air in slow motion. Although Idris knew it couldn't be alive, in that moment, the carpet seemed to be sentient. It was moving with purpose, somehow guiding him. Idris followed, still feeling like he was dreaming or in a waking trance. Up and up he went, past the bedrooms where his family was sleeping. Following right behind the carpet, he went all the way to the top of the stairs until he was standing outside on the roof terrace. It was a beautiful starry night. On any other evening, Idris would have come up here to stargaze. But tonight, his eyes were fixed on the magical apparition in front of him. The carpet had come to a stop, but it was still floating, slowly undulating in the air. Some of the threads seemed to catch the moonlight, shining brightly. Idris watched in wonder. It was like something from a fairy tale, one of the dreamy stories his mother used to tell him at bedtime when he was a little boy. Her stories were full of magical moments, with fairies and genies and talking animals. Imagining was one thing, but seeing was quite another. Idris felt a surge of happiness. Even if this was all just a dream, what a wonderful dream it was. But it felt so real. And when the carpet spread itself out before him, Idris didn't hesitate. Somehow, he knew instinctively what he had to do. He sat down in the middle of the carpet, right on the image of the tree. Once he was sitting comfortably in a cross-legged position, he stroked the velvety surface, giving the sign that he was ready. The carpet seemed to understand the signal. Just seconds later, it began to move once more, slowly lifting itself off the ground. It moved up and up until it took flight, just like a parrot. All of a sudden, Idris found himself riding a flying carpet. He was being carried above the rooftops, smoothly and effortlessly, as though he weighed no more than a feather. Idris looked around in awe, peering over the edge of the carpet. He was already so high up, it felt as though he were riding on the back of a bird or a winged horse. The carpet moved confidently, fluidly, just like a living creature. It was strange just how natural it felt, sitting on a flying carpet. Idris felt comfortable, unsupported, trusting that it would carry him safely. As the carpet glided slowly onwards, Idris enjoyed the bird's-eye view of the city. He knew these streets so well, yet they looked completely different from up here. Gazing down at the rooftops, he hardly recognized where he was. Of course, at this time of night, the city was shrouded in darkness. Nearly everyone was sleeping. The only light came from flaming lanterns in the street and the occasional candle burning in a window. The moonlight didn't illuminate the details, but it cast everything in a soft silver glow. The shining rooftops seemed to have been polished, burnished like a precious metal. Idris imagined that a magical nighttime transformation was taking place. After midnight, the moon carried out a mysterious ritual, shining on each house in turn. Meanwhile, the residents slept peacefully, unaware of the magic above their heads. Idris smiled. He felt lucky to be the only one awake to witness this special moment. But as the carpet drifted east towards the river, he realized that he was not alone after all. There was at least one other person in the city who was still awake at this hour, enjoying the tranquility of the night. Near the river was the grand university building with its tall brick tower, and at the top of the tower was a man looking through a telescope. Idris knew that there were astronomers in the city, but he'd never seen one at work before. As he flew towards the tower, Idris peered curiously over the edge of the carpet. To his surprise, he saw that the astronomer was a young man. For some reason, Idris had expected to see someone who looked like a wizard. But this astronomer was just an ordinary man. He might have been one of Idris's brothers or cousins. The astronomer was so focused on his stargazing that for a moment, Idris thought he would fly past unnoticed. But just then, the astronomer stepped back from the telescope and looked up, right at Idris on the flying carpet. Idris and the astronomer were now separated by just a few meters of air. They stared at each other in silence, in mutual wonder. And then, not sure what else to do, Idris waved shyly. After a moment's hesitation, the awestruck astronomer waved back. Just like Idris, he was probably wondering if he was dreaming. And if not, it was time to pack away his telescope and go to bed. The carpet flew on, drifting parallel to the river. Now that he was feeling more at ease, Idris decided to lie down. The soft wool of the carpet felt as comfortable as his bed. Lying on his back, Idris was in the perfect position for stargazing. He didn't have a telescope like the astronomer, but he could still appreciate the beauty of the stars. They were so far away, and yet their light had traveled all the way here, shining in the sky over his city and over his house. From here, he could see nothing but stars. It was as if he was being carried up into the sky, lifted by the night breeze like a floating leaf. The wind felt so soft on his skin, blowing lightly through his clothes. After the heat and humidity of the day, it felt wonderfully refreshing, like a cool bath or a dip in the river. Idris could smell the river too, its strong scent carried by the same breeze that was carrying him. Breathing in deeply, he recognized other aromas, the distinctive smell of the dusty earth and the fragrant trees in the gardens below. Idris was now feeling so deeply relaxed, lulled by the gentle motion of the carpet. He could have almost fallen asleep right there. He imagined himself drifting off as the carpet followed the winding river, on and on, until he reached the distant sea. But the carpet seemed to sense that Idris was ready to go to bed. It changed direction, and when Idris peered over the edge, he recognized this part of the sleeping city. There was the dome of his local temple, and nearby, the square where he played with his friends. And now, he was floating above the roof terrace, in the place where his adventure had begun. The carpet had taken him home. It descended just as gently as it had taken flight. Idris found himself being lowered so gradually, so softly, that he hardly felt the landing. After stepping off the carpet, he began to head downstairs towards his bedroom. This time, the carpet followed behind like a loyal pet. When Idris got into bed, the carpet settled on the floor beside him. Perhaps it was tired too, Idris reflected. After the long journey, they were both sleepy and ready to rest. As Idris made himself comfortable, moving his pillow and rearranging the sheets, he noticed that the carpet was doing something similar. Ever so slightly, it shifted position. Then, the patterned surface rippled as though a breeze were passing through. Idris imagined the carpet taking a deep breath, just as he was doing now. A deep breath in, then out. Idris closed his eyes. At last, he felt ready to sleep. And just moments later, he drifted off, dreaming of the wind and stars and his magical moonlit flight. Egyptian god of the moon and magic, likes to write at night. His pen always moves more easily under the light of the moon and stars. Tonight, Thoth has a story to tell about the sun god Ra and the people who live in Egypt. His reed pen scratches against the sheet of papyrus as he weaves his tale. Soon the sun will rise, and Ra will spring forth from the land of the gods, leaving Thoth to travel to the underworld, where neither sun nor moon can be seen. Thoth sits in his temple in Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt. Large, smooth bricks make up Thoth's mortal home, and colorful artwork adorns the walls. The moonlight glints on the tips of the pyramids outside his window. The magnificent structures tower above the sleeping city. With a human body, but the head of an ibis, Thoth's long, narrow beak almost touches the parchment where his pen is moving. He is painting the letters of the ancient Egyptian alphabet. The familiar smell of the Nile River wafts into his chamber, sweetening the air. The water, so essential to life in this ancient place, flows through the city. A gentle breeze rustles the palm trees, and the stars glitter in the sky, looking down upon the great sphinxes. Soon Ra will wake and eat the moon and the stars, rising with the great sun. At night, he will travel back to the underworld, keeping the forces of chaos at bay. But things were not always this way. Back in the beginning, there was only Ra, the sun, and Nun, the water. Ra enjoyed watching the water glittering under the sun's rays. He noticed how the glow changed at different times of the day, so he kept the name Ra for the midday sun, and called himself Khepri ab dawn and Artum ab dusk when the sun turned multicolored. But Ra got lonely with no other deities to talk to. So he brought forth the wind, rattling through the palm trees and brushing their flat leaves. Then he brought the rain, relieving the dry desert air with wonderful drops of water. From his tongue came Thoth, god of the moon, stars, magic, writing, and the calendar. With the earth and the rain and the wind, it was only a matter of time until other life forms began to grow. Beautiful plants and flowers blossomed from the earth. Insects and animals flocked to the land of Egypt. Great philosophers, artists, storytellers, and architects made this place their home. Ra was no longer lonely. He walked among the people, plants, and animals, his falcon head hovering above the mortals who revered and respected him. For Ra helped the crops grow and gave the artists and scribes light to make great wax. Ra ruled above the earth, while his brother and fellow god, Osiris, ruled everything below. The underworld, where gods and heroes lived, was a place of beauty and chaos. The mortal world, where the sun shone, was a place of order. Many years passed this way. Ra appointed a pharaoh to uphold law and order for the Egyptians, and Osiris kept to his realm below in the underworld. But eventually, Osiris grew restless and wanted to visit the world of mortals. As the days went by, the chaos of the underworld slowly began to seep into the earth above. Because of this, the men and women of Egypt no longer respected Ra or visited his temple. But Ra was not deterred. He knew there was a way to restore order to the world. Ra called Thoth to him and said, "You have always assisted me in maintaining order. You have created the calendar and managed the seasons. Now I have a new job for you. You must keep watch on Earth in the night." Ra explained that he would visit the underworld at night, making sure Osiris stayed her. But in the day, Ra has work to do on Earth. Every morning at dawn, he begins his daily journey, moving through the sky. His pink, rosy fingers reach up from the east, bringing the light of day. In his great mouth, he swallows the moon, and with his rays, the cities of Egypt come to life. Merchants hawk their wares in markets. Women haggle for milk, eggs, and cotton cloth. Magicians perform feats of wonder in front of captivated audiences, and artists paint pictures onto stones. In the fields, farmers sow their crops: wheat, barley, flax, and vines. And in the towns, children visit tutors who teach them to read and write. As midday approaches, Ra sits high in the sky. The blazing heat pushes the farmers and merchants indoors to rest. Fresh fruit grown in the fertile ground near the Nile helps keep the people cool and refreshed. Even Ra snacks on succulent figs and sweet grapes as he enjoys the glow of the afternoon sunlight. Meanwhile, under the sun's heat, pharaohs wander through grand palaces, ordering the construction of temples, pyramids, and tombs. The architects of ancient Egypt are skilled craftsmen, utilizing a large workforce and expensive resources to build outstanding cities. And the Egyptians are also one of the earliest civilizations to adopt a writing system. During the long, hot afternoons, scribes chisel hieroglyphs into stone tablets and brush soft letters onto papyrus scrolls. Hieroglyphs are words in picture form, beautiful phonetic shapes. They're carved into tablets and painted on walls. Difficult to create, hieroglyphic writing is reserved for priests and politicians. Rather than reading from right to left or left to right, hieroglyphs are always read in the direction that the figure is facing. The figure is often a bird, so this is a fact that Thoth, with his bird's head, particularly enjoys. As the scribes work on their hieroglyphs, the sun god Ra continues his journey across the sky, moving west of the Nile River. Longboats sail in and out of the northern Mediterranean shore of the country, bringing and sending goods to and from the rest of the Near East. Beyond the Nile, Ra looks down at the sand dunes below, where golden dust rides on gusts of wind. Shur, the god of air and wind, smiles at Ra, and specks of sand glint in the breeze. Ra, traveling west, starts to sink lower in the sky. Back in the city of Memphis, golden rays brush the roofs of houses as families gather for their evening meals. Scribes, magicians, merchants, and farmers return home for dinner. Ra watches the families, from farmers to pharaohs, laying dishes across small and long tables. There are green vegetables cooked with garlic, spiced lentils, eggs and bread. Across the land, honey-flavored drinks wash down the hearty food, accompanied by shared stories and laughter. Ra starts to turn the sky pink, purple, and red